Good evening to you, worthy friends. Come closer. Oh, you've heard this joke. Hi, this is Phil Fanstill, and this is the Phil Files. And here I am in my new office. Oh, no, seriously, do come closer. Kind of freaking me out way out there. Oh, thank you. A little too... No, actually, that's perfect. Damn it. Today's world is really messed up. A lot of confusion. And it's hard to know who to root for. My previous post on Putin, case in point. And then with the shooting in San Bernardino, and you got hacked by ISIS, Russia, Iran. You have the New World Order. You have lots of stuff going on. And as I told you, when I had the Putin dream the night before, I was reading Daniel. So I was rereading Daniel recently, and Daniel's a fascinating book. When I was growing up, I loved the first 6 chapters, and the last 6 chapters confused me. First 6 chapters were awesome. It's about Daniel in the lion's den. Actually, the first thing was Daniel going into captivity, then Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and then Daniel in the lion's den. Anyway, lots of great stories, some cool visions of the big statue, all this good stuff. And then the last 6 chapters, I was like, kind of boring. Of course, as I get older, I'm like really focused on those last 6 chapters. Some fascinating stuff. Actually, my favorite verse is Daniel 12:3, or one of my favorites, but that's a good verse. So Daniel, of course, it's interesting. I think there's a reason that the first 6 chapters are about the character of Daniel, all right, and his compatriots Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, the kings he lived under, all this. So it sets the stage. So you know that the guy who's giving the prophecies in the last half, this guy's legit. So you get some credibility there, and you can understand why God would then send Gabriel and reveal all these things to Daniel that he reveals in the last 6 chapters. There's a story that some priest actually showed Alexander the Great the portion that seems to apply to him. So that's interesting. And of course, the book of Daniel, great book. All right, so the king of the north, king of the south. And I think this might help maybe clear up some things. And this is an interpretation I haven't heard from anyone else. I'm not saying no one else has come up with this, but I just haven't heard it. And so I may be on something, or I could be completely just out of my mind. Okay, Daniel chapter 10. Toward the end of that chapter, Gabriel comes to him and says, hey, I would have been here sooner. And as soon as you started praying, Daniel, I rushed here. But the prince of Persia, which most people would, is a devil, a fallen angel, who this principality or power over Persia. And then he was detained by the king of Persia, which is interesting. And then Michael comes, the prince of Israel, the archangel Michael comes to help Gabriel, and they come through. All right. And then Gabriel says, and when I return, I'm going to have to fight the prince of Persia again and the prince of Greece. Okay, so think about those 2 princes, those 2 principalities. Okay, which is actually where you get principalities, prince. Anyway, I'm thinking, I just made that's a Nate fact. I'm sorry. No offense to my son Nate. He gets it from me. I just make up stuff. But it might work. Prince, principality, same base. Could be. All right. I don't know if it is. But that'd be cool if it were. Then I'd have to edit all this out. Anyway. But principalities. The Bible says in Ephesians, Paul says, we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, powers. Right? So there are these spiritual forces at work. We don't fully understand them, but we're given hints at different times. So I think this is a big hint. Because in Daniel 10, Gabriel says, hey, I'm going to have to fight the prince of Persia and the prince of Greece. And then in the next chapter, it goes into, it says, there will be 3 kings after this, and the 4th will be exceedingly powerful and will stir up the nation you're in, which is Persia at that time, against Greece. And so Persia will march down. But Greece will rise up, defeat Persia, and then there's the power, and this is the verse, the section they showed to Alexander the Great. And then Alexander, when he died, he says, to the strongest, I believe is the legend, and the empire is divided into 4. And then it goes and it changes. There's a change, all right? It goes from a concrete okay, 3 kings, and the 4th king will be powerful, and then a goat. I think elsewhere it talks about a young goat rising up out of Greece, which again people think was Alexander the Great. And then it switches to the king of the north, king of the south. All right, so that's interesting. And biblical prophecy, I researched this a couple weeks ago. I was reading some things, and some people would say that a lot of the prophecies in Daniel 11 have actually been fulfilled. The first part, and then toward the end, toward like verse 29, is where a lot of people think they stop. So from the first to about 28, they've been fulfilled, or and they've matched it up to different things. I'm not going to do that here. I'll put a link in the bottom. You can check that out. But when they get to verse 29, that's when it's like, okay, this is kind of a future thing. Well, all right. So in Daniel chapter 11, verse 29. So let me make a hypothesis here. I think I know the identity of the king of the north, king of the south. Yes, get it here first. King of the north, king of the south. The answer is, Gabriel already told us in chapter 10. The prince of Persia and the prince of Greece. Okay? Now, and this actually goes into that earlier when Nebuchadnezzar sees the statue, right? The 2 legs. Okay, so you have the Greek and then the Roman Empire, the thighs, and then so you have this splitting, king of the north, king of the south. All right. Well, the king of the north represents the power, the principality that is in charge of Europe. Okay, and it comes to Greece, Rome, all the countries in Europe would kind of be under his domain or his area. And then the prince of the south is a demonic, the prince of Persia, or this principality, this devil, fallen angel that's in charge of the south. And it's interesting because the whole chapter 11 is them fighting back and forth. All right, so what does that have to do with the price of eggs in China? Actually, China is mentioned toward the last one. But anyway, think about Islam and Christianity, or Islam in Europe, okay? Islam, if you look at it as it progresses, now Islam doesn't come onto the scene until about 600 or 700 AD, but the Prince of the South kind of encapsulates those lands, from Egypt to Persia, all the lands in between. And then the Prince of the North, which would be Rome and Greece, Rome and the European nations, okay? There's this constant battle. If you look at history, you'll see this. Even Rome, powerful Rome, never conquered Persia, all right? It went into Persia occasionally, but it never conquered Persia. And the king of the south, and eventually Islam, went into Europe, but they never conquered Europe, all right? So there's been this border war for the last 2,500 years since this prophecy was given. So I'm suggesting that the king of the south is a principality, and he uses people. Again, they have to use people, well, for now, and they have to use people to accomplish their will. But what Daniel is getting, this revelation he's receiving, I think, from Gabriel, is saying, okay, this is the principality here, and you're going to have principality here, and these are going to go to war, and these are different things that will happen, and different rulers will rise, and all this. Now, this is where it gets interesting, because when you get to verse 29, look at our modern day. There's 2 basic conspiracies going around there. One is that there are some authors, I don't want to mention names right now because I'll probably get them wrong, but there are some Christians and some authors that believe Islam will be the Antichrist. The Antichrist will come out of the Islamic empire. People refer to the Mahdi, and maybe Muhammad when he comes back, but the Islam would be the Antichrist empire. Okay, and that's interesting because Islam does cut off heads, and that's one of the things that is mentioned, I think, here and in Revelations, definitely, that a lot of saints will lose their heads, and so that could match up there. But then the north is European, the Roman Empire. Okay, so you have. Well, think about this now. A lot of people have. Oh, the second conspiracy, I'm sorry, is the Luciferian elites, this Masonic, don't blame everything on the Masons, but this Luciferian elite system, okay? I'm not going to go into all the things. There's a great video I'll put in the description if you want to check out more about secret societies. But these Luciferian secret societies are very powerful. and they're not hiding it anymore, which is kind of sad that people are still like, I was just watching a video today. I won't say the artist, but they're talking about how the Masons, you don't have to be a Mason to understand this. I mean, they're right in your face now. But a lot of people are, oh, that's just music. Oh, they're just, okay. Well, so the king of the north, king of the south is the Islamic. So when on my little contention, and check this out, read this, see if it fits. Okay, as it gets into 29 and on, this king of the south is the Islamic, and the king of the north is your European Luciferian New World Order. Okay, and so they come in. And they're constantly fighting over the Holy Land, which talks about the people of the covenant, the Holy Land. They're constantly fighting over the Holy Land, and then eventually, the King of the North wins, or not wins, but he takes over, and this is where the Antichrist comes in. But there's still this battle. Now, if you pay much attention to conspiracies and to the news, you see we have two enemies now, as Christians and people of God and people of just that want justice and truth. All right. Now, I believe if you're seeking truth, you will eventually find Jesus, because Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life. And no man comes to the Father but through him. And so as people are seeking the truth, I believe that God reveals himself. And by the way, so many dreams of people in the Middle East, so many stories of people in the Middle East receiving dreams and coming to Christ through dreams, which is, again, supernatural. Nothing humans could do. God is revealing himself. And so people that seek the truth, I believe, are going to come to Christ. All right. But here's the thing. This Luciferian elite, they're trying to take over the world. Islam is trying to take over the world. And in the news, again, kind of one of these conspiracies I haven't talked too much about on YouTube yet, but 9/11, it was blamed on the King of the South. It was blamed on Muslims. But there's a lot of evidence that says it may have been the New World Order. And I'll put a link down there and check that out. But there's some interesting stuff there. And even now, we have this like cloak and dagger thing. I think number one, they want to disarm America. Okay, because America is problematic, which actually I think talks about it. At one point it says, in verse 30, it says, ships of the western coastlands will oppose him and he will lose heart. At the point in time, he will invade the south again, verse 29, but this time the outcome will be different from what it was before. Ships of the western coastlands. Could that be the U.S. Navy? Again, a lot of people are always trying to find America in the Bible. That could be. And then he will turn back and vent against the Holy Covenant. So he goes against Israel. So he tries to take over the king of the south, is not able to. So what if Europe were to amass a big army, all right, to go and take out the Middle East? And I think in these wars that have been going on in Iraq and Afghanistan, and I'm not, the more I grow older, the more I'm like, but here's the thing. Never been a big friend of Islamic fundamentalism. Not a big fan. But they may be on to something. Actually, the first person that told me that 9/11 was an inside job was a Muslim friend of mine. And at the time, I dismissed it. But then now I'm like, well, maybe he's right. So maybe the Muslims are getting stirred up because they're getting blamed for something they didn't do. But now they're doing stuff, and they're falling into a trap. It's kind of like, in the classroom, a kid hits another kid, and then it's always a second kid that gets caught. All right? Same thing in sports or whatever. There's always a second person that gets caught. Well, things are being stirred up by the Luciferian elites. The Muslims are reacting, not all of them, but some of them, and then they get blamed for all of it. All right? And so it's very deceptive, and that's actually another thing that says it will be by deceit and all this kind of stuff. But then at some point he comes in, and he finally takes over, and then people from the east, news from the east, distracts him, which is interesting, because China, the Far East, could play in there. I mean, this is the global world. This kind of gives us a framework that then Jesus talks about in Matthew 24. Revelation goes into extensive detail on. If you take Daniel, Matthew 24, and I think Luke as well mentions it, and then Revelation, they kind of layer in an amazing pattern. And anyway, I won't get into that now, but But that's my little theory. Again, I could totally be off, but I think the king of the north and the king of the south are devils or fallen angels. I would say demonic, but demons and devils are not the same thing. Just a little, I said this before, but devils or fallen angels are spiritual, and they want worship. Okay, demons are impure spirits, as the Bible says when Jesus, when he cast out demons, he would cast out impure spirits. These are probably the spirits of the Rephaim, or the Nephilim, basically the children of the fallen angels and humans. And when they had children, these were the giants and Goliaths and Titans and whatever, and they were killed. They killed each other, actually, which is kind of what's happened to the king of the north, king of the south. And then when they died, their souls were impure. Their souls were not created by God, so they had to have nowhere to go, so they roamed the earth, and that's where you get demons. That's the little thing. So demons want possession, devils want worship. Well, the king of the south and king of the north are devils. Okay, these are fallen devils, fallen angels. And so that's my theory. Check it out, see if it jives, see if you can kind of see some other things in here. But I think that kind of is a key, which kind of unlocks a lot of this. And especially it's kind of when you're trying to jive, okay, Islam is chopping people's heads off, but then they're using American guns and Toyota trucks, and they're, so what's going on there? I mean, what's going on in Benghazi? There's a lot of this stuff. I think the New World Order is inciting this, and they're getting there, and people are reacting, and then the West is going to unite. So I see the West uniting against Islam. All right, but it's under false pretenses. I mean, it's been a manufactured war. All right. Anyway, that's kind of an interesting thing. And then the ships of the western coastlands, which from Europe, everything is Jerusalem centric. When you read the Bible, everything is Jerusalem centric. And so the western coastlands, if you go west from Israel, where do you hand? Well, you're in the Mediterranean. There are no coastlands till you get to America, if you go due west. Now, if you go north, you hit Europe. If you go south, you hit Africa, or southwest and northwest. But if you just head due west, you may hit the Rock of Gibraltar. But, I mean, as far as, like, solid coastline, it's America, which is interesting. Again, one of the conspiracies is that the New World Order is, and you look at the back of the dollar bill, there's hints all over that thing, but that the New World Order is trying to take America, make America the new Atlantis. And this goes back to Francis Bacon. This goes back a long way. I don't think it's going to happen. As an American, I'm praying for my country. I'm going to stand in the gap for this country. I have stood in the gap, and I'm going to fight. This country is going to be a shepherd. This country is going to be a sheep nation. As Jesus said when he comes back, it's going to be a sheep nation. Now, we may have to go through some crap to get there, because there is a lot of conflicting. I mean, look at American history. We won't get into that now. So anyway, so that's all to say. Think about what you that, and let me know what you think in the comments below, and I'll respond to them. All right, appreciate it. Have a good day. Shalom, and good YouTubing.